with a priority of Aliwal North today, precisely because in that marking center, they are marking the language, isiXhosa to be precise, in the province, which is one of the crowd-pulling subject in the province, and also a failing subject, so to speak, because even if you can pass in terms of the regulations we have, if you have failed the languages, you're deemed to be a failure in terms of the examinations procedure. So it was critical for me to look into how best do we make sure that today we start on a good note and also finish up the examinations that we have started a couple of weeks ago, again in a good note.
Mhlambe kuthini nje nisenza i-visit marking centers?
The reason we're making the visit to marking centers is precisely because you'd remember that we are one of the provinces that have got a huge number of grade 12s. By extension, it means you need to be meticulous in the examinations management procedures, but also examinations in the country are a highly regulated environment, and therefore you needed to be very closer to the space, advise accordingly, but also look into the blind spots so that you continue to have an irregular free examinations, as we have already done so. So we are wrapping up, to be precise now, the examinations for 2023. So it will be very, very bad for us to take our eyes off the ball, especially now that they are conducting marking after a couple of months that they have been engaged on the assessment and examinations of the kids in the province.
All right, MEC says zikhona mhlambe ezinye indawo enisezawuphinda niye kuzo uvisit centers.
Yes, on Wednesday we are visiting Matatiel in terms of the schedule. On Friday we are visiting St. John's College. We have targeted Joe Babi, targeted Alfred Nzo-West, and targeted OR Tambo as well. And again, we have to look into a combination or a hybrid, if you like, of a smaller district and the bigger ones, and also look into a diverse nature of the subjects that are offered into those marking centers. But also critically for me was to talk to the markers themselves, precisely because when you talk scripts of learners, you are talking life and death of those kids. So there must be no mistake of any kind. Hence, I said earlier on, around July, August, that in the province, there must be no mistakes in terms of the school-based assessment. There must be no kid that does not have marks going to final examinations on the basis of either submission or any error that comes out of the SBAs. So that we have dealt with. But currently, how do you deal with the issue of the 75% that they are writing for in terms of the examinations regulation? So we are dealing with that particular question now. But equally, how do you make sure that in terms of the broader strategy of the province of a continued trajectory of 5% improvement for us to get that 80% and above, we sustain that? Because if it's not just about teaching and learning in a classroom, it's also about how the post-teaching and learning process is managed in the context of marking, in the context of monitoring the examinations, and also in the context of standardization if needs be, so that kids are not at any stage disadvantaged by the processes and systems that we have put in place.
Um,
My view is that it doesn't start there, so to speak. It's just a manifestation of how parents have outsourced the responsibility of the education of their own kids. Because remember, in terms of the policy and the South African Schools Act, the parents are the custodians of the policy prescripts in schools. So a decision taken by that school via the SGB is a supreme one in terms of the legislation and also in terms of law in education. But however, we have been always encouraging at least the senior management of the schools and SGB to be sensitive to the fact that some parents might not be in a better space of either compensating back such a loss of property of government, but equally, how do we retrieve the books and property of government for other generations of grade 11, grade 12, grade 9s that are there? Because remember, a lifespan of a book is almost 4.5 to 5 years. So there is no way that we can buy textbooks every year. That's wastage of government space. So there is a need of a collaboration and work together between the management of the sector, the SGBs, the parents, but equally look into the best interest of the learners, because in terms of their own rights, they deserve to get those reports, albeit the fact that one has lost a book or not. Because remember, from a law kind of a view, the learner is not a custodian of the debt or of any lost property. The school must then find a way of either taking the parent into court of law when such kind of things happens. But we don't encourage that kind of hostility. We rather manage our institutions in a manner that does not resemble a state as authority over them. The assignment as a sector is to make sure that beyond examinations, there is sanity in terms of the young people that are there writing examinations or not. We have been observing that this culture of pens down continues to present its ugly face into the sector. And unfortunately, one amongst the reasons that we are encouraging parents to get closer to that space is because when those things happen, no one wants to take responsibility, unfortunately. And remember, we have a responsibility of nurturing the future of the country. And also we have got a responsibility of a very good conduct post the examinations. Hence, our view was quite very clear to say no pens downs must be allowed by parents, and no pens down must be allowed by schools, principal and SGPs, so as to guard jealously the future of these kids, because it will be very disastrous to go back to a situation that we experienced a couple of a year or two back, and you'll be any kind of an incident. Yes. So we don't need such kind of incidents in our own communities. It's not a question of you being right or wrong, or a question of you having rights or not having rights, but it's a question of being responsible. Yeah. Because there will never be rights without responsibility attached to them if we are quite serious about building this nation, unless otherwise.